Hello and welcome to the 2021 Diabetes Forum. We're excited to offer this as a virtual event this year. My name is Tim. I'll be your moderator for the day. We are in a studio and we've taken measures to make sure that we're socially distanced. I'm going to go ahead and take off my mask at this time so you can hear me a little bit more clearly. We have an exciting lineup today. We have a dietitian doing a cooking demo. We have a clinical exercise physiologist showing some easy exercises to do at home. And we have Dr. Breedlove, a psychologist, that will be sharing tips that you can use to help manage psychological flexibility with your diabetes. All throughout the presentation, the chat will be available. We do have members of our team that are manning the chat, so please put your questions in there. We have some dietitians and exercise physiologists that can answer the questions as we go throughout, so please plug those in there. We'll also have a panel at the very end where all three of our experts today can answer questions live. We want to make this event as interactive as possible, so please plug some questions there in the chat. We'll be happy to answer them either live throughout the event or at the very end when we have the panel discussion. Our first presentation today is from Alyssa Bixler. Alyssa is a registered dietitian that works at the McConnell Heart Health Center. She is also a certified diabetes care and education specialist. Alyssa has her master's degree from The Ohio State University in clinical nutrition. She specializes in diabetes and weight management services, and she's the quality coordinator for McConnell's Certified Diabetes Education Program. Alyssa enjoys spending time outside, cooking creative meals, and connecting with her patients. We hope you enjoy this cooking demo from Alyssa.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to actually jump right into my demo and show you how to make quinoa. Quinoa is a whole grain that a lot of people have heard of, but a lot of people I work with have often not actually tried it. So I'm going to show you how easy it is to make. I have a cup of water boiling, and I'm going to add my 1/2 cup of dry quinoa. So it's a 2-to-1 ratio for quinoa water to quinoa, and make sure that's covered with the water. And then we're going to cover that and lower the temperature so that at the end of our presentation we can come back and see if it's cooked. So the first thing I want to jump into talking about is the value and importance of meal planning. One of the things I notice so often in my practice is that when we eat healthy, it's because we have healthy foods available. What happens when you're hungry and you really don't have a healthy food available? You're either going to run to DoorDash, open your fridge and see what's in there, and oftentimes it's something convenient and not as healthy. So what I hope today that you'll take out of this presentation is an easy way to set yourself up to have healthy foods ready to go. And this is a presentation I'm going to be talking about I call the Power Plate. And the idea is that we can create healthy components to our meals that are ready to go for the week. So since this is the weekend, it'd be a great time to do some meal prep and prep our Power Plates for the week. I'm going to show a slide that is an example of the Power Plate I made this week for my meals, and then we're going to talk about how to put this together. First of all, I'm going to show another slide that is showing what it means to create a balanced plate. This is a really easy concept. A lot of you have probably heard about it, or heard it before, where we call it the plate method, where we think about how much of our plate is covered with certain food groups. So especially when you have diabetes, you notice that half plate of non-starchy vegetables is a really good way to start your meals and really even try to focus on planning our meals around meeting that goal. Most Americans do not meet the daily goal that we have for vegetables, and so just reflect, how am I doing on my vegetable intake? Am I getting at least 2 cups a day of vegetables? What could I do to move towards that goal? And planning the Power Plate is a great option. As we jump into the plate, I actually want to switch and show you my fun plates. So I brought a couple fun plates, and I'm going to show you that these are 8.5-inch plates. That is the ideal plate size, somewhere between 8 and 9 inches. When we use a plate that's larger than that, we eat more food. Our eyes like to be showing a full plate, and so we use a larger plate, we eat a larger portion. If we use a smaller plate, we often go back for seconds. So that's something to check in on. What's your plate size you're using for your meals? If you're not using that 8 to 9 inch plate, it's a great thing to treat yourself to. Do what I did and buy some fun 8 to 9 inch plates, and that helps you set up for the right portions at your meals. If we look back on the slide that shows the meal planning plate, we'll see a couple other components, and they are the lean proteins and the grains or starches, which is your carbohydrate component. So let's talk a little bit about that carbohydrate or starch component, because that's an area that when you have diabetes, a lot of people question. Should I be having a starch in my meal? Is that okay for my blood sugar? Well, the key answer to that question is portion. I'm going to show my starch slide. So portion is the key if you have diabetes on the component of your plate that's a carbohydrate or a starch. Since we're making quinoa, let's talk about an example of quinoa being a really good bang for your bite food. Quinoa is really high in a lot of minerals like iron, manganese, magnesium, zinc. It's a good source of fibers and resistant starches that help feed the good gut bacteria. It has antioxidants, it's low in sodium. And I'm going to plate my plate today with a half cup of cooked quinoa, and that's going to be a portion, or giving us about 111 calories, 20 grams of carbohydrate, 2.5 grams of fiber, and 4 grams of protein. So overall, the carbohydrates can really fit when we portion our grain, and we get a good bang for our bite. So sometimes those grains are really make sense on our power plate, but come back to the point of portion is key. On this slide of starches, I'm showing some other examples of whole grains or more quality starches that you could include. When I meal prepped this week and made my power plate, I meal prepped quinoa and roasted sweet potatoes. And so I had 2 different starches I could rotate in for a couple different meal ideas. Now let's talk about vegetables. One of my favorite ways to make vegetables is roasting. And roasting vegetables is actually really easy. It adds a lot of color and nutrition value to our meals. And when we roast vegetables, I think they just taste delicious. It's one of my favorite ways to prepare vegetables. So when I prepped my power plate, I roasted vegetables ahead. And I'm going to show you just some simple steps for roasting vegetables. First of all, you can see my tray of vegetables. The vegetables are spread out in a layer where they're not overlapping. And I'm going to spray them with olive oil. One mistake we make with roasting our vegetables is overdoing the oil. And that just adds a lot of calories without really adding a lot of volume to our food. So I'm going to spray my vegetables here, and you'll see it getting a nice even layer of olive oil on there. And then I'm going to add a spice. I'm using herbes de Provence, but you can use a lot of different spices based on your preference. You could use garlic, cumin, spice blend based on what you like. And there's not really a right or wrong amount to add here. This is really your preference. And this whole idea of meal planning with the power plate is something that you can get very personalized and do what you prefer. This is my other spice blend. It already has several spices mixed together just to make it easy to flavor your foods. And we use spices, we get a lot of flavor without adding as much sodium. So this is a picture of me putting my roasted vegetables into the oven, since I can't demonstrate that today. And then we're going to roast those vegetables for 30 to 40 minutes on 400 degrees. About halfway through, it's nice to check on them, stir them so they get more evenly roasted. When they come out of the oven, it looks like this. And I have an example today on the slide, and then I'll show you here my example that I brought in to plate our plate at the end. So when I did this, I made a lot of vegetables, so I was ready to go for more than one meal. I really love to cook once and eat at least twice, hopefully more than twice, from my efforts of cooking. Now let's talk about protein. Lean proteins are a really valuable part of our plate. They help us feel full, and protein obviously provides important nutrients for our body. It is really important when you have diabetes to choose lean sources of protein. Today I brought in some chicken tenders and some salmon, just as some examples. And I also brought in my black beans because it is nice sometimes to rotate in a legume as our protein source. And again, with our power plate, we are personalizing this. We have flexibility. When I created my power bowls or my power plates this week, I used chicken, and I also had another bowl where I did the sweet potatoes roasted with my black beans, and that was a really nice combo. So again, you can cook once and have a couple different meal options. And then finally, I want to talk about toppings. And I have a slide here to talk about topping ideas. One mistake we often make with our toppings is portion. So you might notice the theme here, that portion is key. These power plates that I'm making, depending on your exact portion, are around 500 calories. And that's a really nice amount of calories for a meal to help with weight management. And so when we add toppings to our power plates, it's really nice to have about 50 to 100 calories added. It's really easy to add 200 or 300 calories in toppings. So just showing these portions to help you think about what would be around amount that we're getting to our goal of that 50 to 100 calories. Here's an example of sliced almonds. That's 2 tablespoons. It would be a nice topping on top of the power plate. And then I'm actually going to show you guys how to make an easy topping for the power plates that I made this week, and it is called Greek yogurt dill sauce. So we start with a plain Greek yogurt, and you want to use about a cup. And when you buy it like this, it's really easy. This is not quite a full cup, so you could add an additional container as well. So we got our yogurt, and then I'm going to add some dry garlic. I prefer the dry garlic. I've tried it with the fresh garlic, and I don't like the fresh garlic without cooking it myself, but you can definitely use fresh garlic as well. So we're going to add the dry garlic. We're going to flavor this with lemon juice. This is just a really nice flavoring agent. It gives it a good texture. It doesn't add very many calories or carbs. And what really gives it a pop is the dill. This is a 1/4 cup of dry dill. You could use fresh or dry dill, but that's going to give it a really good flavor. So again, we're flavoring our food with spices versus salt. Although I would taste it and then add salt and pepper based on your preference of taste as needed. Okay, so it's really easy. Got a nice sauce here. And this sauce for 2 tablespoons is only about 12 calories, less than 1 gram of carb, plus a couple grams of protein. But you could, afford even a bigger portion than the 2 tablespoons with what we're to get to our calorie goal for the meal. So we have a nice sauce. So we can kind of look over here and think about all these different components of our meal planning power plates, having these ready to go. So I'm going to go back and check on how my quinoa is doing. Actually, hasn't quite been, it does take about 15 minutes to cook the quinoa. It's not quite ready yet, but it will be in about 5 minutes ready. So I'm going to plate our power plate using my already cooked quinoa that I have down here. And we're going to see how this looks when we pull it all together. So I'm going to use my fun 8.5-inch plate. And I'm going to add my 1/2 cup of quinoa here. I like to serve with measuring cups because you have to serve with something. So why not use this as a serving spoon? You know what you're getting, you're portioned. And I didn't quite get my 1/2 cup, so I'm adding just a little bit more on there. We're going to add the roasted veggies next. And you can really add, this based on what you like. So when I made this for my family, not everybody liked asparagus of my kids. So they focused on the other veggies. But my husband and I, we love the asparagus. We added that. But you want a lot of vegetables. You can really almost not eat too many vegetables in terms of filling up your plate with vegetables. The other thing that I do when I make my power plate and I'm having half of my plate veggies is I sometimes add also into this raw vegetables. So for example, I brought in some raw spinach. If you didn't plan ahead and roast veggies, you could actually have a whole half plate of spinach. And that would be another nice option. But I think it's even nice to kind of combine a little spinach on there with your hot vegetables as well. And then we can decide what protein you're in the mood for today. I'm in the mood for salmon, so I'm going to add that as my other 1/4 of my plate. I like to use about the palm of my hand as a good guide for a portion of your protein. So about 3 ounces for women, maybe a little bit bigger than that for men to get our protein. And then we're going to finish this off with our delicious sauce. I'm going to use my tablespoon as a serving dish because it helps me measure. And you can put this wherever you like. It might be really delicious on your salmon with the dill. It's really good on your veggies or your salad. So just kind of give your meal a nice flavor with your sauce. We use a couple tablespoons of that because it's pretty low calorie and get a big punch of flavor. So we just created a power plate I hope that is something that you could see yourself doing at home, or again, personalize this to be your preference. And just a challenge as we think through how to plan meals and create that balance we're looking for. Maybe this is something you want to incorporate this weekend. So I will be available for questions at the end in our panel, so feel free to add any questions you have for me today into the chat, and I look forward to seeing you later in the presentation.
Thank you, Alyssa. That was incredible. I personally don't fancy myself as a cook, but that looked really easy to do. I think I could do it, and I can't get over how beautiful the plate looks. I think when you do something yourself and it looks delicious and it looks beautiful, that really makes it a lot more fun, a lot more enjoyable. So I can't wait to try some of those myself. I did see a comment in the chat about the PowerPoint slides. We will try and make those available. If you register through Eventbrite with your email address, we will do our best to send all the PowerPoint slides with the recipes and that information to the email address on file. So look for that. Thank you for using the chat. It's been fun to watch. I hope that you guys are getting some good answers to your questions. We'll also save some questions as well for the panel at the end. So as we transition to Dr. Breedlove, continue to use that chat function. And again, we'll answer what we can in the chat, and we'll save questions for the panel as well. Our next speaker is Dr. Aaron Breedlove. Dr. Breedlove is a psychologist at OhioHealth. He works out of McConnell Heart Health Center. He completed his PhD at the University of Toledo, and he works in several health-related areas, including cardiac rehab, pulmonary rehab, weight management, the bariatric program, as well as the diabetes program. His specialty is mindfulness interventions, and he works with people that have a history of trauma and are interested in changes in their lifestyle. He's also a 5-time Ironman triathlon finisher, as well as multiple marathon and triathlon finishes, various levels including the Xterra World Championships. He enjoys traveling and has lived in Ireland and Germany. Hope you enjoy the presentation from Dr. Breedlove.
Hello, I'm Dr. Breedlove. I'm a psychologist at McConnell, part of OhioHealth. That may sound very impressive, but I came in last, and I think in that last race, the Xterra World Championship. So we're going to be talking about diabetes and mental health today. Before I really get started, I wanted to just make sure you got a pen and a piece of paper and answer this simple question. Diabetes is blank. I don't want you to think about it too hard. I don't want you to, think this is a psychological trick. It's just a simple question. What is diabetes to you? Diabetes is. And I am nervous, and I'm going to talk about, at the end, managing difficult emotions like anxiety. So it's okay. It is going to be okay to say you're nervous or you're feeling difficult things. Hopefully by now you have your pen and pencil and or pen and paper, and you've answered this question. Diabetes is what? So to be totally honest, I'm not a diabetes expert. I don't work with diabetes every day, but a lot of my patients do. So what do you do when you don't know something? Well, you Google it. That's sort of a joke. I didn't really Google it. I don't have to. But I was curious what people think about diabetes and what they do Google. So this is the top 11 things that people search on Google for diabetes. Diabetes is the cause of the malfunctioning of which organ? Anybody? You should know this. It's the pancreas. Diabetes is caused by what? Well, it depends what type of diabetes we're talking about, type 1 or type 2. And I know type 1 diabetics out there, you're probably in the minority. Most of you probably are type 2. But type 1s are there, so I'm not forgetting about you. Type 1 is an autoimmune disorder. Diabetes is a disorder of what system? Hopefully you know this. It's the endocrine system. A chronic disease in which blank. A disorder because insulin is what? What is insulin? Insulin is a pain. It's very difficult to manage. It's very expensive. It's really at the heart of diabetes, and it's difficult. Diabetes is characterized by what? Hopefully you're answering at home. Abnormal blood sugar levels. Diabetes is a metabolic disorder. What doctor is responsible for hormonal and metabolic disorders, including diabetes? Endocrinologist. However, all of your doctors, all of your treatment teams should be looking at your diabetes, treating your diabetes at least as a factor in your overall health and functioning. Okay, so that's what diabetes is on paper, but really what diabetes is to people with the disease. What is the felt sense? What does it feel like to have diabetes? What's the experience? Diabetes is depressing, okay? And I'm guessing a lot of you wrote this list out. It's depressing. You have, with a diagnosis of diabetes, you have 2 to 3 times more likely to have a diagnosis of depression. It's real, and it can't be ignored. Diabetes is lonely. If you've ever gone out to eat, if you have diabetes and you're at Applebee's and everybody's ordering and everyone's eating whatever in the heck they want, and you're sitting there thinking, well, I need to count my carbs. I got to think about this. That can be very isolating. People tell me they often feel different. Diabetes is anxiety provoking. It is anxiety provoking. There's no question about it. Scary also. It's very difficult to understand. And the one in red there is an expletive I can't say right now, but that is literally the response I get from a lot of people. It's very distressing. Diabetes is expensive. It's talking about insulin. A vial of insulin goes for $100 to $150. That's very, very expensive, along with all the other expenses you have to check your blood sugar. Even checking your blood sugar costs about $1 on average. The cause of irrational behavior. I wish you were in the room with me and we could talk about this, but if your blood sugar's ever been 50 or your blood sugar's ever been 350, you know what I'm talking about. You can't always think straight. It's very difficult. I'm talking about it being confusing, and it's just plain hard. Diabetes is a hard disorder. It's very complex. So I really wanted, if nothing else today, is for you to acknowledge that out loud. Do you understand how complicating living with diabetes can be? And give yourself some time and some credit regularly, but you got to do it today too. And some space to just acknowledge that out loud. And your family and your friends and the people around you might not understand that, what it's like to live with diabetes. And of course, some of you out there have dealt with this more than others, okay? There's a huge array, a spectrum of people and their symptoms and how it affects their life. So, but give yourself some time. It's very complex physically and it's very complex psychologically. There's so many factors that go into diabetes care. Even the weather, how you sleep, whether you're exercising. If you exercise, your blood sugars are very simply much easier to manage. So exercise, just a little bit. You don't have to do anything crazy. Hydration is big. The timing of everything. If you take Lantus, when do you take your Lantus? Do you take it in the morning? Do you take it at night? The timing of taking insulin is huge. Menstrual cycles and mood. Your mood, rage bolusing. When you're very upset, what does your blood sugar do? Well, for most people, it goes up. Or if you're really low, it's probably going to go lower. So this is complicated. It's not simple. It's not just take a pill and walk away and you're good for the day. This is a constant thing throughout the day. And you have to acknowledge that. So, and you need help. Very simply, you can't do it by yourself. So even though I've been talking for 7 or 8 minutes, I wanted to talk about the goals for today, and it's just simply to learn something new. We're going to keep the bar very low. Something like your reaction. Like as a therapist, I would be interested in your reaction to diabetes is. I would want to know that. What did you say? Were you very intellectual? Were you talking about the endocrine system, or were you talking about what it feels like to have diabetes? So just learn something new and take and run with it. And when I did literally Google the research in diabetes, take what you already know and the new stuff you learn and put it into action. I got this quote when I was doing my research. Diabetes education is important, but it must be transferred to action or self-care activities to fully benefit the patient. So I'm going to say that again. Diabetes education is important, but it must be transferred to action or self-care activities to fully benefit the patient. So we all kind of know what to do, right? We have this great knowledge about everything, but we don't always do the right thing. We know we're supposed to, exercise and eat right and get good sleep, but we don't always do it. That's just heightened with diabetes. And if you're wondering what the self-care activities are, here's a list of them. This is your daily work. This is what you should be grounded in daily. And Alyssa mentioned the diet plan. You need a diet plan. And it's not a seafood diet. You seafood need it. You need to work with a dietitian, chart this stuff out, log it. How many carbs are you getting? See a dietitian. They're wonderful, and they will go over what you eat with a fine-tooth comb and give you great advice. Things like avoiding high-fat foods, that's your daily work. Carbs, okay? What is your relationship with carbs? How many carbs are you supposed to be eating in a day? That number should have came up. Carbs are like a toxic X that you don't want to like anymore, but you kind of do. Carbs, I love carbs. I could eat carbs all day, but I know they're not good for me. So what is your treatment team telling you about carbohydrates? Okay. Some people think, okay, well, I'm diabetic, carbs are the problem, I'm just going to go no carbs. I'm going to go keto. That's a problem too. And you're going to get a lot of different answers out there from your dietitians, from your endocrinologists, from your treatment team about what to do with carbs. And there's good carbs and bad carbs, but you have to be a carb expert as a diabetic. You should know how many carbs are in a banana. You should know that. And if you're like freaking out right now and saying, I don't know the answer to any of these questions, that's okay. Okay, like I said, this is complicated. You have a lot to learn. And take it step by step. Increased exercise, just exercise. If it's seated, sitting and raising your arms above your head, going for a walk, running in place, going to the pool, any type of increased exercise. We have great exercise physiologists at McConnell and here at OhioHealth. Natalie's going to talk to you later. We also have Lori Essman. They are wonderful, and they will meet you at your level, and just do it. That's all I can say. Get an exercise physiologist on your treatment team if you don't already. How many times a day do you take your blood glucose? That number should come up in your head also. For some people, it's more complex, and you take it 5-6 times a day, or when you eat. Some people, it's just 1 time a day. But you should know how many times. And again, why don't people do it? Because they don't want to know the number. They want to avoid it, and it's expensive. So there's lots of reasons not to do it, but you got to. Or you could, part of the also expense of diabetes is a continuous monitor. Those are wonderful. You don't have to finger stick anymore, but it's also extremely expensive, that hardware. Foot care is really important. Social support, which I've alluded to already, and then psychological needs, which is my focus. What are you doing to take care of your psychological needs? And this is the third goal of my talk, is to introduce this topic of psychological flexibility. Like I've mentioned research a couple times. We're all looking for, what is the magic variable in not just diabetes, but other illnesses too, that make people resilient and to keep fighting and to stay in the fight. But this psychological flexibility construct is really it for me. And this is the definition of psychological flexibility, and this is a mouthful. A person's ability to adapt to dynamic situational demands, effectively summon and direct their mental resources, shift perspective with agility, and balance competing desires and demands. So you might want to take a picture of that if you can't write it down, because that's a lot. Just to go through it line by line, a person's ability to adapt to dynamic situational demands. What does that mean? What does dynamic mean? Dynamic means ever-changing. A person's ability to adapt to dynamic situational demands. The world is always changing. The world is in the middle of tons of change right now. So life is even more complex than it normally is. The next part, effectively summon and direct their mental resources. Effectively summon. When things are not going well, do you have the ability to focus and direct your mental resources? Sometimes that's hard. That's not easy when you're in the midst of stress, or your blood sugar is 350, or your blood sugar is 55. It's extremely difficult. Shift perspective with agility, being light, not on your feet, but in your mind. And balance competing desires and demands. I've thought a lot about that sentence. Balance competing desires and demands. What does that mean? What are our desires and what are our demands? So think about demands, maybe not so much as like what you have to do, but what should you do? What do you need to do? But what are your desires? My desires always come back to food, and that's important. So psychological flexibility, it's a really interesting key construct. And this is just a simple 4 things to do. I say simple, it's not really simple. But I do have them in order of what I call psychological magic. Okay, number 1 is a little bit simpler than number 4. And I talked about those difficult feelings. So these get more complex, accessible, without any kind of help, basically, from a mental health professional. So let your values anchor and drive your life. What are your values? Who are you? What fulfills you? Focus on the present. Mindfulness, being in the moment, and not taken away by your brain to the past, the future, all these other things. And then a third thing to increase psychological flexibility, to step back from your thoughts. Okay? Do you have a thought process going on right now in a normal way, how your brain kind of functions? Can you step away from that and say, wow, look at my brain work. That's not good. That's a tool. That's a tool you can use. And then the last one, be willing to feel difficult emotions. And that's hard work. It's very difficult. So I'm going to go through these one at a time. Let your values anchor and drive your life. So what do you value? What do you value spending your time doing? We all have a finite time to live. That's depressing, yes, but also true. But who are you and what do you stand for? What do you get out of bed in the morning for? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What fulfills you in a deep way, not like in a big screen TV way or a new car or a fancy house way, but that deep kind of fulfillment. And staying anchored to that, I mean, we see very clearly in the psychological research that people who are connected to that and stay living with a life of intention, if you will, revolving around those values, are happier. And when you get disconnected from it, you tend to get depressed and anxious and lost. And listen, that is super easy to do because why? Because you have all these things to do in life. You have kids and parents to take care of. You have a job, a retirement, and when I ask people, what do you value? And they're like, well, I have no idea. I'm just trying to make it. But you can carve out this time for your values. Okay, we're talking about psychological flexibility in diabetes. So if you're here and watching, you value your health. That's very clear if you're taking time on a Saturday. So put that down as one of your values. And how do you serve that value on a daily basis? In my example, I said, I keep coming back to food, is, how do you serve your values with food? Do you prep your food? Do you stick to your diet plan? When you're out on vacation and you're having fun and you're out to eat, what do you order? And in that moment, that very moment, you have to make a choice between your desires and your needs. Sometimes, and some of you aren't, cursed with the taste of food that I have. I crave the worst of the worst foods. But what do you pick when you have that desire and then you really know what you should do and need to do to be healthy, to serve that value? And I mentioned the word should. Should's a dangerous word because we have lots of shoulds out there, like I should be a better person, and that's kind of can be a slippery slope when you get up in your head and you think about that finger wagging in your face about shoulds. And that's really kind of the next one that I'm going to talk about. Well, maybe the one after this one, but focus on the present. It's another way to increase psychological flexibility. And when you're making a decision around diabetes, you have to focus on that moment, okay? You have to focus on that moment, take all those factors into place, even though, your brain is busy. Your brain is off into, I have diabetes and I hate this and this is awful. But in that moment, you need to focus. And that is not just a skill with health, but in life, being in the moment. And my example there is a walk in the woods. When you go for a walk in the woods, where is your brain? What is your brain doing? Is it off into space? Are you thinking about the past, the future? Are you hung up on some anxiety? Or are you listening to the sound of the birds and the light off the lake and the sounds and the experience of it, okay? So it's normal to be caught up into your brain sometimes. That's the brain's normal state. And this is where things start getting complicated to understand mindfulness and this whole kind of philosophy of life in relationship with your head. It's the brain's normal state to kind of get pulled away because that's what it does. It solves problems in the world for you. Your brain's doing amazing things all the time, like driving here. I don't remember driving here, but I did apparently. And my brain made 10,000 decisions, but I don't remember any of them. It's just kind of on automatic pilot. Brain does that sometimes. It has to help us negotiate the world. But when we stay on automatic pilot and we don't connect with the here and now, like the walk in the woods, we never enjoy the moment. I hope that makes sense. But if it doesn't, it's something definitely to check out. Be here now. Be in the moment. Let your brain sometimes go. You don't have to be off solving problems all the time. You can just simply be sitting on the beach or where you are and be connected, okay? All right, so related to a lot of that, and I talked about this already, but stepping back from your thoughts. Don't believe everything you think because your brain's amazing, but it's also crazy. For some of us more than others. Our brains can be very faulty, biased, judgmental, very flawed. Take us down what I call the dark alleys of our lives. Really small things sometimes in a day can trip us up and take us away into your thoughts. Or sometimes when, my example is a bad A1C. What does your brain do when you get a bad A1C or you get bad medical news? What do? Well, a lot of people catastrophize. Well, this is it. I'm never going to get this right. I can't do anything right. I've tried dieting a million times. I screwed it up again. Now, not all of us are hardwired like that, but some of us are that are kind of default negative. But you don't have to buy into all that, okay? If you can get a process of looking at your thought process, okay? A metaphor that I often use is your internal experience in your brain is a river kind of flowing, right? That's your thoughts, okay? And sometimes we're in the midst of that river just trying to swim. And really the goal of mindfulness and this whole philosophy of stepping back from your thoughts is you're just trying to get to the side of the river. If you can get there and say, oh, that's what the river looks like. I don't have to jump in. I don't have to buy all these thoughts that are coming up because they're not really that good or useful. It's just my flawed brain. And again, be careful when we put judgments on our brain. Like, you're not broken, okay? It's just that's how your brain works. And believe me, this takes a long time to sort out. This idea of mindfulness and mindful living. A good start, apps like Calm, Headspace, 10% Happier, anything by John Kabat-Zinn, Z-I-N-N, on the internet. There's a great video I've probably showed everybody a million times at work. Our thoughts are bubbles. It's my favorite thing. I watch it. I've probably watched it 300-400 times, and I still get something out of it every time. So check it out. So think about that when you get bad news. Can you step back from your thoughts and say, very self-blaming thoughts also with diabetes. What I often hear is, I did this to myself, okay? If you said that to yourself, you You need to step back from that and take a moment, okay? Share that with your treatment team. That's important. And then the last one. So I had a funny moment a couple weeks ago when I was talking about this anxiety being good. As you know, we're working with telehealth mostly. So I was on a Zoom call with a lot of people, and I said, anxiety is actually a really good thing. And a woman who thought she was on mute said, "What is he talking about?" And I said, well, that's a great question, because that's a lot of people's reaction when I say anxiety is good. Sorry. But anxiety is a negative emotion, or we don't like to feel anxious. We don't like to feel scared. We don't like to feel guilty. But there's a lot of value in some of those. Remember, this is complex stuff. This is deep stuff that, to really understand and to get through, you need help or a book, a mindfulness book. Steve Hayes has a book called Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life I would recommend. But anyway, anxiety can be good. Anxiety keeps us from doing really dumb things like driving 120 miles an hour on the highway. If I didn't have anxiety, I would run out of here from the door right to my car and just run through traffic. That anxiety is stopping me. So we have innate anxiety on snakes, things like deep water and heights, because they help us survive. Deep water is dangerous. Heights are dangerous. That anxiety you feel is keeping you alive. But this gets very more complex. Okay, how does this relate to diabetes physically? When you don't feel good physically, what do? How do you manage that? This gets very complicated with negative, or what we see as negative emotions, and how to manage them. But they aren't always bad. If you feel anxious, you can use skills to calm your body down and literally have a conversation in your head. I'm feeling this in my body, and I kind of want it to go away, but I can't control. And in diabetes, we want to control, right? We want to control our blood sugar. But the more you are restricted and rigid in your thinking and behavior, it's not going to help. I like the word manage. If you can manage it, if you can manage your experience simply by breathing, and that's the first step, is often your breathing. So I'm getting a little short on time. So listen, if that's complicated and you don't get it, it's okay. It's complicated. Okay, so to rehash how to increase psychological flexibility, let your values anchor you and drive your life. When you get out of bed in the morning, you can ask yourself questions. Who am I? What do I want from my life? Where am I going? That centers you. That anchors you. Okay? When you get out of the house in the morning, and sometimes it's like, it's busy. Mornings are hectic. But if you can get anchored into what you need to do and what you want from the get-go, write it down on a piece of paper. You have a much better chance of doing it. And it's okay if you don't know what you value. Go on that journey. Focus on the present. Okay? Be here now. Just put that in your search engine. Be here now. Connect with the moment when you're out for a walk, or you're swimming, or you're eating. Mindful eating will change the way you experience food. Step back from your thoughts and your crazy brain. Sometimes your brain is, out to lunch. But it's okay. It's normal. But can you step away from it and say, there goes my crazy brain again. I'm going to step away from that thought, or I'm going to kind of analyze that thought, and is it worth using? And be willing to feel difficult emotions. Anxiety is one. People who have panic attacks often, it's made worse because they don't want to just feel a little bit anxious. If you get anxious about feeling anxious, then it's a whole snowball effect. Oh, and the last thing is just simply practicing meditation. And meditation, mindfulness is very hot these days. Everyone's writing a book about mindfulness. We have had a program here at OhioHealth for over 40 years. And there it is, mindfulness-based stress reduction program. You might want to take a picture of that with your phone. If you just search OhioHealth Mindfulness, this will come up. This is not a good program. This is a great program, okay? This is an asset that you should use. I would love to take it, to be honest. There's the number. They're amazing. They do amazing work over there. So remember, these are the things that you need to do on a daily basis or do today. Start today. Be good to yourself. This stuff is hard. Diabetes is difficult, but be patient with yourself. Don't expect too much of yourself. Some of you just want to solve the problem right away. It's not going to happen. Think about your exercise regimen. When it's not going to happen overnight just because you decide I'm going to start working out. It's going to take time. Be good to yourself. When you fail, when you have quote-unquote failures with your diet or your exercise or your goals, treat yourself with kindness like you would a friend, because we talk to ourselves a lot differently than we talk to other people. Be active in your care. Demand more from your treatment team. Okay, you have to take control. We can't make you do anything. I can follow you home and tell you to do things, but that would be awkward. Demand the best. If you don't like your treatment team, find a better treatment team. Find people that suit you. We'll understand. I mean at OhioHealth, not other places. But keep learning and growing. Be on the path of getting better at this. I hope that makes sense. And that's it. We'll take some questions at the end during our panel talk. Feel free to wade in with anything about mindfulness, psychological flexibility, or diabetes.
Thank you, Dr. Breedlove. I really enjoyed that presentation. Some great examples of ways to be kind to yourself, ways to monitor your own thoughts. I know I took some things personally from your talk, so thank you. I really appreciate that. Especially when you think about anxiety. We all have some level of anxiety or another. So I really appreciate thinking about how can you step away from that? How can you spend more time in nature? How can you practice some mindfulness? That's very, very helpful. So thank you. The chat is going great. Continue to put questions in there. If Dr. Breedlove said something in his presentation that you have questions about, please feel free, plug it into the chat. We're keeping track of those, and we'll bring them back up in the panel section after the exercise. So if he sparked any questions or you want to ask a follow-up question to something that he said, please put it in the chat, and we'll make time for that. We're going to pivot now to our next presenter. Natalie Mamlin is a clinical exercise physiologist at the McConnell Heart Health Center. Natalie earned her bachelor's degree in exercise physiology from Bowling Green State University and her master in public health from Indiana University. Natalie worked with patients in both the medical weight and the surgical weight program to help them develop exercise behaviors and workouts to meet their personal individual needs. She's worked in the health industry as a personal trainer, health promotions consultant, diabetes prevention coach, and a cancer wellness coordinator. I hope you enjoy this presentation from Natalie, and you can ask questions in the chat. We do have someone there to help answer questions as she goes, and also we'll save questions for the panel. Thank you.
Hi everybody, welcome to the exercise portion of our program today. I'm excited to be here and to share with you a workout that I put together that is really designed to get all of our muscles activated literally from top to bottom. So these exercises are just small, dynamic movements. Hopefully there'll be things that you'll be able to do on your own. The only thing that I recommend to have during this workout is a chair. You may need that for just some support for balance in some of the things that we're doing. And then at the very end, we will be doing things where we're actually seated. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to talk about when we do talk about physical activity is good posture. We want to start all of the activities that we're doing in a good place where our body is strong and less likely to get injured. So standing nice and tall, feet about hip distance apart, and think about having your weight distributed evenly on both sides so we're not leaning from one side or the other. So nice and tall, shoulders back. I want you to just take a nice deep breath and nice and slow, inhale, and then just turn your head to your right, just looking gently. I want these movements to be really nice gentle and slow. And then go ahead and exhale as you take it to the left. And let's go back here to the right with an inhale, and then take it to the left. As you exhale, come back to the center and take it to the left. Okay, so all of these movements should be nice, slow, and controlled. The next one we're going to do is thinking again about adjusting and having very nice tall posture and literally just rolling our shoulders back. So these are dynamic movements. It helps to make the joints feel looser. We are frequently at desks for a lot of our day these days, so having these kind of movements throughout the day can really be helpful to be less stiff and just feel good. And then let's go ahead and take those to the right. Forward. So nice and slow. Just continue those movements. And let's go again for 4 more to the back. 4, 3, 2, and 1, and take it to the front. 2, and 1. So the next one we're going to do is actually called a shrug. So we're going to stand tall again with our shoulders back, and I want you to think about bringing your belly button actually back toward your spine. That allows us to engage the core. We're not holding our breath, but it's allowing us to have a little bit more control and to use our core in that way. So what we're going to do is take our shoulders up toward our ears with a nice big inhale, and as we exhale, we're going to take it down past that neutral feeling. So we're getting that stretch through our shoulders. Come back up with an inhale, and exhale as you take it back down. And one more time, inhale up, and exhale nice and slowly and take it down. So again, that's kind of thinking about as we're seated throughout our day, giving us the opportunity to feel that stretch and loosen some of the tense muscles that we might be feeling. The next one that we're going to do is putting our hands behind our head. These are side bends, and I want you to again think about doing this in a gentle way. All of these motions should be nice and slow. So we're going to just place our hands behind our head. We're not pulling in. Literally, my fingertips are just touching the back of my head. So I'm going to inhale, and literally, as I exhale, just take my elbow down. Come back up to center. We want to continue to keep our hips facing forward. We're not twisting at this point. Exhale as we take it down, and inhale up. And exhale down, and inhale up. So you should feel this down in your core, in your obliques, which are the muscles that run along the side of your core, and come back up to center. So this is where you should be feeling those, and hopefully it feels good. So go ahead and put your fingers back on your spine, or the back of your head, and this time we're actually going to do a very gentle twist. So think about that nice tall posture. We've got our feet about hip distance apart. We're going to inhale and exhale as we take it to the right. Come back to center. Nice and slow, we're going to take it to the left. Come back to center and exhale. Inhale. Exhale again. Let's do one more on each side. Exhale. Come back to center and exhale. So hopefully as we're doing this, you're feeling these muscles activate. That's the whole point, is to kind of work on this activation, recognize it, and it should feel pretty good. So the next one we're going to do is also a core. We've done exercises in classes, and you may have seen things called a chop, where we're taking it down and up, down and up. So that's a real common exercise that you may be seeing in different classes that you take. We're going to actually take that side to side. It's called a zigzag chop. So we're going to take it up, and literally, as we go down our body, we're going to switch to the different sides. Exhaling on those twists, but this is a nice way to activate the core. And it's nice that it can be done without getting down on the ground. When people are on the ground, it can be more difficult, and that's where we think most of our core has to be done. But there's lots and lots of standing core exercises. So that's called our zigzag chop, which is kind of a fun one. The next one we're going to do as we move down the body is look a little bit more at our hips. We're going to do an exercise that is called the hip abduction. So this is where I thought you might need a chair if you need a little bit of help with balance. So standing tall again, take those shoulders back. Think about that core. All 10 toes pointed forward. We're literally just going to take that foot forward, side to side, just side and back to center. As we do this, we want this to be controlled, and if you can, don't touch the floor on the bottom there. Let's go ahead with 10 of these. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Great. I'm going to go ahead and move to the side if that's okay, so you can see on the other side. Basically the same thing, but we're going to make sure we've got all 10 toes pointed forward. Our knees should not be locked. We can have soft knees here. Hold on if you need any assistance. This is also a nice balance check. If you don't use it and it can help you, you've got it right there, that can help you with increasing your balance strength. So go ahead and take it straight out for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So hopefully you felt a little bit of activation there within our hips. They get really tight when we're seated for long periods of time. So again, I want to also hone in the message that all movement matters. These may seem kind of minimal, but they're really great movements to get your body nice and loose and less likely to get injured. So the next one we're going to do is actually squats and squat hovers. So when people think squats, they think it's something they can't do, their knees may hurt, but when you do them appropriately, it should not be a problem. I'm going to turn this to the side because I want you to see the good form. Again, we're thinking about having our feet hip distance apart, but making sure that we've got weight, distributed on both sides. When we do our squat, we don't take it straight down. That's when you're going to feel it in your knees. What we want to do is think about doing a little bit of a hip hinge and just taking that bottom back. I know there's a chair there, so just thinking that way. You're taking it down to get toward the chair. This way you're really using the right muscles. You're using your quads and your glutes and not putting all that pressure on your knees. So let's go ahead and work together and do 5 of these. Take it down for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Now that we have that down, I want you to give another little add on to it a little bit and turn it into a hover where we're actually just going to hold that squat down. Again, your squat may not be deep, but that's fine. You're still activating the same muscles. So let's take it down and just hold that squat for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Awesome. Go ahead and shake those legs out. The next one we're going to do is an exercise that if you've done yoga, you've seen, and it's typically done more on tabletop where you might be on hands and knees. But we're actually going to do this standing. So it's called the bird dog. What I want you to do, standing nice and tall, think about that good posture. We're going to create a little hip hinge just right here. I'm going to pick up my right arm and my left leg goes back. I'm going to take it back down. My left arm and my right leg comes back. You're going to feel that engagement basically in your glutes when you're doing this, but also a little bit of core. Take the left arm up with the right leg. Now that you have it, let's go ahead and just take it a little bit smoother without stopping. Exhale on that reach. Just make sure you're taking it nice and slow. We don't want to rush through these exercises. Think about breathing. Never hold your breath. Exhale on that reach. Let's do 4 more. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Good job. Okay, the next one we're going to do is actually seated. So go ahead and grab your chair. As we're seated, I want you to think about having your feet flat on the ground, nice tall posture. You're welcome to sit towards the back. I tend to sit towards the front because I'm not very tall. You can hold on to the sides here when we do some of these if you need to. So take a deep breath, shoulders back. The first one we're going to do is very simple. It literally is just a knee extension, okay? As we take it up, we're going to exhale. Nice and slow, we're just controlling this movement and really feeling the muscles that are engaging. Talk about mindfulness, and I think it really has its place in exercise as well. Recognizing what muscles you're using, as you activate them. Let's do 2 more like this. And now we're going to switch to the other side. So these are things you can do while you're actually maybe sitting in a Zoom call. No one can see you from here down. You can keep moving. Not a bad thing to just keep that the muscles moving. Helps break down sugar. It's just a good way to stay healthy. 2 more. 1 and 2. Okay, now we're going to do something that's similar to that one, but we're actually going to take that foot. As you're looking at your right foot, I want you to think of it as a clock. We want to point our toes toward like 2 o'clock. So our heel is kind of sticking out. So as we sit nice and tall, we're literally going to lift, letting that heel lead. You are going to feel this in your inner quad right here. It's a place we don't always hit very easily with traditional exercises. So let's do 5 more. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So that one can be kind of a killer. So that's something you can work on. It's a really good one to add to your exercise routine. This time we're going to pick up our left foot, turn it where it would be maybe like 11 o'clock. So we've got our heel kind of leading, sitting up nice and tall. We're going to lift. Keep breathing. This is one where people tend to hold their breath. It's the last thing we want to do when we exercise. Let's go for 4 more. 4, 3, 2, and 1. So while we're sitting here, go ahead and take out that right leg again and just point and flex. Just add circulation whenever we can. Roll that ankle and take it to the other side. Awesome. Go ahead and switch sides. We're going to point and flex. Roll that ankle. Again, these can all be done individually. It doesn't have to be in a very set order like this. And go ahead and take it to the other side. We're getting close to the end. We're ready to do a little bit of stretching. So sit up nice and tall. I want you to take your arms straight out and pull them back just a little bit. Getting a little bit of stretch through the chest, but also our biceps. Then I want you to tip your fingertips back. That intensifies the stretch just a little bit more. Keep breathing through this. And release. So last, we're going to do an overhead stretch. So let's take our right arm up over our head. Grab that wrist with your left hand and reach it over. You should feel a nice stretch down your right side, hitting even a little bit of those hips. Exhale through your stretches. These are called dynamic stretches that we always end our workouts with. Now let's switch hands. Got the left hand up, right hand is holding onto that wrist. And breathe through this. Continue to breathe. Beautiful. Go ahead and take your arms down. We're going to cross here in the center. Take it up with a nice big inhale. And as we exhale, roll your wrists. Keep everything moving. All movement matters. Okay. And when we hold it right out here, bring your fingers back, your arms back up, and just touch each finger to your thumb. And back. One more time. Perfect. Your hands down, end it right at your heart. Thank you for joining me. I enjoyed working out with you today. I'll be here on the panel if you have any questions about exercise, and good luck. Thanks.
Thank you, Natalie. That was awesome. What I really appreciate is that those exercises are easy to do. You can do them if you're traveling or at home or in your office. I know I'm stuck behind my desk a lot during the day, and with the pandemic, we're all on Zoom calls a lot. So having that opportunity to get up and stretch your legs and get some movement in during the day really does make a difference. Thank you. We will be sending out information after the presentation as well to give you some tips that you can look back on for refresher for some of those exercises. We're going to transition now to the panel discussion. So all 3 experts that you heard from today, Alyssa, Dr. Breedlove, and Natalie, will be available to answer your questions. We hope that this is a really interactive part of the morning. Use the chat, put any questions in there. I'll be monitoring. Anything that you put in the chat from this point forward, we'll pull directly out and give to the panel participants. So be active on there, ask some questions. anything that you heard today that you want clarification on, or if you have another question that wasn't covered today but you would like to know the answer to, you have access to a team of experts right now, so ask away and we will do our best to answer those. I think we will start off. There was a question earlier in the presentation that came through the chat, and the dietitians did answer it, but I think it's a good one to discuss in person, so we'll start with that first. Alyssa, do you have any ideas of ways to avoid snacking while watching TV in the evenings?
That's a great question, and that's something that I've struggled with personally too. It can be such an easy habit to have an association with. I'm relaxing in the evening, I sit down, watch TV, and it's a trigger to feel hungry, or maybe it's not a physical hunger, but more of a emotional hunger that we can trigger. So I think we have a couple options for that category. One of them is to change that complete trigger. So that might mean that we are actually recognizing that there's an association with the evening TV watching and the desire for a snack, and try to change your routine. So maybe you switch to reading a book in the evening. Maybe it's that you go to a completely different part of your house. Or maybe even if it's as the sun stays light longer, we even take a walk outside. One of the best strategies we have when we're not physically hungry and we want to choose food for maybe more of an emotional reason is the pause. So when we have a desire to eat that's not physical hunger, it usually starts out really strong and powerful, but the longer we wait to eat, it goes down. It's the opposite of physical hunger. When for physically hungry, we start out kind of low. If we don't eat, it goes up. So kind of asking ourselves that question, where's this starting from? Is this physical hunger, emotional hunger? And Dr. Breedlove was talking about mindfulness, and I think that's such a helpful idea related to making a food choice in the evenings, is really just pausing, saying, what's going on here? Why do I want to eat this? What do I want to eat? When you're physically hungry, vegetables don't always sound good, or fruit, or healthy food. So if they do sound good, that might be a sign you're physically hungry, and that's something you could ask yourself as well. So just pausing, taking a moment to think, what's going on with my body? Am I physically hungry? What's going to meet that need I have, in terms of a food choice? And taking a minute to pause and think before we actually make a food choice. It helps me a lot to have better choices available. Again, back to meal planning, being prepared, having the right food in the house. If you have less healthy foods that are tempting in the evening, it's super easy at night when our inhibitions are lower to go choose some chips or some desserts. When those are harder to get to, and when we actually have healthier foods available, maybe a Greek yogurt cup, this might be a good time to have a cheese stick. We have some healthy options we can grab. It helps a lot. So pause, make a mindful choice, have better choices available, change our environment. So those are some of my tips for those evening temptations.
Thank you, Alyssa. Natalie, so you showed us some really great exercise tips that we can do with no equipment at all. But if we want to buy some equipment, but we have really limited space in our house, we don't have a lot of room for large equipment, what are some things that you recommend purchasing that we can get started with?
Okay, good question. I would say, looking toward that resistance training, we obviously showed you ways to do some body weight exercises, but bands are a great option, and there's several different types of bands. There's the kind that you may have that are therapy bands that you get from your physical therapist, and then there's some that actually have handles that are sometimes easier to hold on to. And then small free weights are another good option to just add into what you're doing, even doing some of the exercises we've done and adding those weights to them. So those are all great options, and another really great tool to use is having some sort of step counter. I think is really important to monitor how much we're doing, and walking really is the best thing we can do for our bodies, so we've always got the availability to do that even if it's around the house. So just easy things that you can pick up very, very reasonably priced.
Great, thank you. We got a question here in the chat from Barbara. Barbara's asking if there's a good app to count carbs. Some of them are really complicated. Do you have any suggestions on an app that can help with carb counting?
I always often default back to my favorite free apps, which are MyFitnessPal and Lose It. Innate.com. Both of them have a very large database of food that includes carbs. So they're not carb specific, but I feel like they're really easy to use because they have such a nice big food database and they're free. So those are two of my favorites. If you have a like a Fitbit or a tracking device, sometimes they'll come along with a food tracking app that's nice to use, and I think those are a good quality as well. And if you just want to look online, sometimes I like to use the Calorie King resource as well. So none of those are necessarily carb specific, but they all include carbohydrates as one of the things you can look at. So those are the ones I go to.
Thank you. I'm going to check the chat here. Okay. While we're talking about apps, Dr. Breedlove, do you have any apps that you would suggest for mindfulness?
Sure, I mentioned Calm, Headspace, 10% Happier. They're all free apps. Will give you about 10 free meditations that are reasonably short. You can find a ton on YouTube that are free. Spotify is actually really good. There's plenty of good content on Spotify, daily wellness. There's there's a few mindful eating apps on Spotify, as well as a lot of relaxation stuff. So just remember, if you're thinking about mindfulness, mindfulness isn't necessarily relaxation. You might relax when you're being mindful, but it's not the same. So you might want to search specifically for mindfulness and things like Calm and Headspace. Speaking to the carb question, I like Calorie King. We could have a argument about that, not argument, but discussion. Some continuous or pumps, insulin pumps now have apps built in. So if you're going to bolus, you can actually look it up through your pump. So there's a lot of good resources, and you just have to find really what works for you. Some mindfulness apps you're going to listen to, and in the first 45 seconds, a lot of people who try mindfulness for the first time say, I'm not going to be able to do this. You get right up in your head after 45 seconds, and that's pretty normal. So expect frustration, but you also want to have it be an enjoyable experience. So try some until you find one that you really like.
Great. Shannon was asking, it looks like Mel answered, but she was saying the two names again. It was Calm and Headspace are two really good apps to go to.
Absolutely.
Great. We had a question earlier in the presentation about bananas specifically, and that bananas have, you think would be a healthy food, and they do have potassium, but they also come with a lot of carbs, right? And that can be surprising.
Right.
So when we're thinking about fruits, are fruits good? Are fruits bad? Are there some that are better than others? What would you recommend?
Right, so fruits are a carbohydrate, so we really have to think how they fit into what else you're eating and into, your carb goal. And recognize the portion, again, is the key with the fruits, because just like our starches, the portion's going to matter. So a banana is a great example. Bananas are a large fruit, so for just a medium banana, it's about 30 grams of carbohydrate. And I love Dr. Breedlove's challenge to look that up, and I love that somebody in our chat did and said, whoa, I didn't know there was that much. So that was really cool, and it is really good to be aware. Can I eat a whole banana? Probably, but I definitely wouldn't eat it with anything else that has a carbohydrate, especially if that's a snack. And actually, your blood sugar would do a lot better if you would have half of a banana. Another tip you can do if you love bananas is get green bananas, because the less ripe the banana, it actually has a lower glycemic effect. So that's helpful as well. And green bananas have a lot of that resistant starch that's good for our gut health as well. So in general, fruits have what I call good bang for your bite. They do come along with a lot of other nutrition, like vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, fibers, so you're getting a lot of good nutrition with fruits. And I think they're worth continuing to keep in our diets. But really, portion is key, and what else you're eating with it is key, because the total carbohydrate at one sitting is what will affect our blood sugar. Berries is one of the lower carbohydrate fruits and full of good nutrition as well. So that might be one to incorporate more often. And so in general, I just would say I hope you would still include some fruits, but I think another good tip with fruit is to eat it with something that's low in carbs, that has more protein or healthy fats. Like have that half of a green banana with some peanut butter on it, for example. And your blood sugar would do a lot better when we combine some proteins and fats in with the carbs. It doesn't cancel the carbs, but it helps the blood sugar raise a little slower, which helps our body have time to process that food better. That's another tip, is include it as part of a balanced eating episode.
I always like my banana with peanut butter, so
Me
who
too.
knows, I was doing something good. Natalie, if I have a fitness device that can show me my heart rate, that's really good, but if I'm concerned about overdoing it or going too far, how can I find out what my target heart rate is? So if I'm using my device or checking it manually, I'll know where I should try and target.
That's a great question. So with our, there is an actual formula to figure out how to figure out your target heart rate. And it is to take the number 220 minus your age. So that will give you a number that's going to be the high end of where your heart rate should be. You want to be between 60 and 80% of that when you are working out. There are going to be exercises which we call HIIT, high intensity interval, where you may go above that after you're conditioned and maybe have been working out for a while. But typically staying between that 60 to 80% of that number that you calculate is a healthy place to be.
Great. This question could go to either Natalie or Alyssa. Maybe we'll start with Alyssa first. What are some good snacks that can fuel a workout?
Great. So carbohydrates are our best fuel for exercise. They're quickly digested. They fuel our muscles fast. And sometimes we'll want to consider having a carbohydrate snack a little bit before we exercise. When you have diabetes, it actually is really smart to check your blood sugar before you exercise. And if it is, you can personalize this, but a good guide is if it's below 100, you may go ahead and eat a 15 gram of carb snack before you exercise. And it may even help to keep a snack or some glucose tabs with you while you're exercising, because exercise does lower our blood sugar, which is an advantage with diabetes, but also one of the things we have to just be proactive about to prevent low blood sugars as well. So depending on having that 15 gram of carb snack within an hour before you exercise, that's a nice option to recommend. So maybe fruit is actually a nice choice at that point. Yogurt, 6 Triscuits would be some examples of 15 grams of carb. And you may also, depending on your meal pattern, and if you had that snack beforehand, consider having another 15 grams of carb within an hour after exercise. That is more related to refueling glycogen stores and helping your body recover so you're ready for another good workout next time you exercise, if it's within a couple days. Mm-hmm. So, you want to add anything, Natalie?
I think basically, that information is really good, and it's also important as an individual to recognize what you can tolerate and how you feel based on what you've eaten, because everybody's different when it comes to that. So probably something, like Alyssa said, on the lighter side is going to be good, but you're going to want to have something in your stomach is a good point to look at. I think if we go in there without anything to fuel, we're not going to have a good workout, we're not going to feel well, and we probably won't get a lot of benefit from that workout that we're doing if our body isn't well fueled.
One thing you can do so you're not eating extra calories is try to time your exercise around meal times, and so that you are fueled, before and after exercise. That doesn't always work, and I think you always should exercise when it works and when you can fit it in. But this is something you could think about if you have that flexibility.
We have a question here from the chat, and it's timely for the pandemic. He's asking, he's heard that some people develop diabetes after having COVID. Have you seen that or know anything about that?
I do not know that for sure. It's definitely something I could try to gather more information on. I know that weight gain is a risk factor for developing diabetes, and I think that COVID has been a challenge for a lot of us related to weight management. And that's a different answer, a different question. Specifically having COVID, I don't know, honestly. I have to gather more information. I don't know if anybody else knows.
I would say just plain old stress triggers lots of things. Stress can trigger autoimmune disorders. Stress is kind of influences everything. So I would imagine rates of most bad things are going up due to COVID, including diabetes. Absolutely. But we haven't probably seen that in the research yet, but I imagine that would be the trend.
Thank you. Dr. Breedlove, you mentioned during your presentation that we all have anxiety, and levels of anxiety are good and can be healthy. But when do you think it's time to seek out professional help? What should people think about as they're looking and making that decision whether they should actually seek out a therapist or not?
Well, I would say if you're thinking about it, you probably should. Therapy, there's a stigma that goes along with therapy. Therapy doesn't always have to be about deep, dark secrets or the past or really difficult things. It can be very future-oriented. So it doesn't have to be always a heavy thing. Of course, it is at times, but if you're thinking about it, I would do it. There's lots of different therapists you could go see out there. A psychologist is what I would recommend because I'm slightly biased, but there's social workers, licensed therapists. Coaching is a big industry these days. The biggest thing I would do is just find the right person. I think that's the biggest key. But if you're thinking about it, I think it would be beneficial for you.
Great. We've got a few questions coming in here on the chat. So question is, I tried to skip breakfast, but my sugar really goes down. All cereals have tons of sugar and GMO grains. Any healthy and quick fix other than yucky plain oats?
Great questions. So when you have diabetes, skipping breakfast may not work well for your blood sugars, and that's an example of that this person is talking about. And so we do want to really think about what's going to be a quality breakfast choice. I really like to try to include some sort of protein source in my breakfast. Eggs are great. They don't raise blood sugar, and they're really nice for weight management, but you may get tired of having eggs. Although I would say you can do a variety of things with eggs, like make little egg muffin tin bites. This morning I actually took one egg, put it in a little casserole, small little dish, and microwaved it 30 seconds, and put it on a whole grain English muffin. It was actually super easy and fast, and a nice balanced breakfast. And I did throw in some spinach on there too, and Greek yogurt sauce that I had made for this demo. But so there is, sort of thinking outside the box for breakfast sometimes. There's a lot of traditional breakfast foods, and I think you're on track that cereal a lot of times is not a very good blood sugar related choice. I mean, cereal is very processed, and it does tend to really raise blood sugar quickly. It has a high glycemic effect for a lot of kinds of cereal. If you love cereal, then I would really gear you toward a low sugar, high protein cereal in a small portion size, and still combine it with something that's going to have some protein, maybe some of those sliced almonds, like a tablespoon of those on top, or a filtered milk that has a lower carbohydrate content already on top. Since milk is a carbohydrate, if we use that lower carb milk, that helps as well. Big bowls of cereal, especially sweetened cereal, are, I would say, worse for blood sugars than a dessert. So it's not a great way to start the day. And so whole grains, protein foods, other quick proteins besides eggs could be like cottage cheese or slice of cheese, peanut butter, turkey sausage, avocado toast, some nice healthy balancing foods. And just thinking outside the box, why not eat leftovers for breakfast? They're a lot healthier than a lot of our traditional breakfast choices as well.
Thank you. Got a question here from Tom. Tom likes crunchy snacks, and I agree. I like crunchy as well. But he said, what can I do besides nuts or other items that are loaded with carbs and fat?
Yeah, I love that question. One of my favorite sort of trendy foods is the dried legumes. I don't know if you've tried those, but you can buy them in the 100-calorie packs already ready to go, or you can, if you really are a cook, you can make your own. But they are easy to purchase. And so they do have a little carb, but they're also a lot of protein and fiber. And so I think those are a really nice alternative to like a chip. I also, of course, when I hear crunchy, I think vegetables. I mean, we have to think that, especially as a dietitian. And again, having those crunchy veggies that I love on your fridge ready to go and eat sets you up to choose those at that, when you're ready for a crunch. So some raw carrots, some celery sticks, some broccoli cauliflower, maybe a radish, ready to go. And, that dip we made today would be like an awesome thing to have ready for a snack too. It would be great with your veggies, or some hummus would be a nice thing for a crunch. And if you do choose to have like a starch crunch choice, like a chip or a pretzel, it comes back to portion. I mean, that's one of the challenges with those foods. It's so easy to take that bag and walk to the couch, right? So let's figure out how many carbs are in them. Let's put a portion in a small bowl if you choose to have those, so that it doesn't spike your blood sugar.
Great. Natalie, you gave us some really great options of things to do that are quick and easy for someone that's beginning a workout routine. What about somebody on the other end? Maybe they've exercised their whole life, maybe they were a college athlete. Where should they start if they want to get back into an exercise routine, but maybe they've been out for a while?
Okay. Basically, we want to always focus on getting 3 major components in our workouts to make it balanced, and that's cardio, resistance, and flexibility. So looking at, how can we get our cardio if you're just starting off, walking, and then that's a really easy one to progress into interval walking and potentially running if that's something you're interested in, and then lending itself to moving on to maybe taking classes or doing, different types of cardio equipment. With resistance training, which is a really important component because that's where we do build muscle, which helps drive our metabolism. Starting out with the things we had mentioned, but then moving on with, going with resistance training, maybe in a gym or using free weights and just increasing the weight that we're using. And flexibility, always, go back to things like maybe yoga or just simple stretches. So once you have your it's like a menu of things you like to do within each of those areas. There are so many things right now, I keep telling people, online. There are just all kinds of digital memberships that are really, really beneficial, that you can pick and choose what you want to do and the levels that you can do them. So there's really good stuff out there that if you don't want to be in a gym, that you can still get some really good workouts based on your own personal level.
Okay, well, we are almost out of time here. We have one final question and we'll wrap it up in the chat. So, Alyssa, are there any good fruit juice drinks?
Oh.
Well, to be honest, I really am not a fan of fruit juice, especially related to diabetes, but really for most people, because I think it's really a weight-gaining food and really high in sugar. So I don't really recommend fruit juice unless you need to gain weight, and then I would recommend fruit juice. If you did choose to have juice, you love juice, we consider a serving size to be 4 ounces, which is a half cup. And if you did choose to have juice, I would choose a 100% natural juice so it didn't have any sugar added. My recommendation, though, would be to try to switch to something that's maybe still flavored but a 0-calorie choice, like a flavored water. Actually, I really like things like the bubbly waters, or a vegetable juice. They can be salty, but you could get the reduced sodium tomato juices or vegetable juices, and those are really lower in carbohydrate. But overall, my advice is don't drink your calories. When we drink our calories, we end up eating the same amount, and we tend to gain weight. So that's my advice to leave on.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. It's been fun for us here in the studio. We hope that it was enjoyable for you as well. We enjoyed the interactive piece of it, being able to answer your questions real time and doing the panel as well. In the future, if you want to connect with us, we are located at the McConnell Heart Health Center, which is close to Riverside. If you're looking to get into a fitness routine, there's a wonderful fitness facility there that you can look to join. The website, McConnell Heart Health Center, if you Google that, you'll find information there. The experts that you saw today all work at McConnell and are accessible as well. So get onto our website, ohiohealth.com/weight management. You can see some of the programs and services that we offer and ways to connect with us in the future. Thank you all for joining, and have a wonderful day.